Hi, and welcome back to Storytime with Dave. Dave Booker. Today we're going to be reading from, let's see if I can find which one I've got here. Here it is, Time is Lost. This is another one of the Time is series books. And we're going to be reading about the Grecian holiday. Basically, it's where the team goes down to the first Olympics. So, no idea what I was going to say. Might as well just start in it because I had a whole soliloquy, a whole big thing ready, and damn it, I forgot. Next time I'm going to have to write these down. So start with the Time is Lost. The quote is, "As you set out for Ithaca, hope your road is long one, full of adventure and full of discovery," by Constantino Cavafis. Over dinner, they discussed what they wanted to see and do. The ladies wanted to go somewhere and somewhen where they could spend the day eating and shopping. The men were keen to see a little sport and, yes, do a lot of eating too. Attending an Olympics was bandied about, since Honey was in favor of a Greek or Roman someone. Don looked at Honey with a grin. "You'll go anywhen that allows you to wear your toga, won't you?" Honey smiled back. "I've never heard you complain when I've worn it after you asked me to." Frank looked at Sandy. "I don't know what it is, but Sandy and one still drives me mad, even after all these years. She has a few in different colors and styles that knock your eyes out." A look and secret smile passed between Wilf and Francis, but they made no comments. Wilf's eyes told all that could be said, and to the point where Francis blushed. Francis asked Honey if she wanted to attend the games. Just a bunch of guys running around, drawing things and stuff. I'm sure we can find something more entertaining. Sandy got a reminiscent gleam in her eyes. "I seem to remember that the first Olympics events were held in the Buff. We might want to do some research, just for the historical aspects, of course." Honey and Francis looked at each other, and a grin and sparkle came to their eyes. Maybe we should find something else," Don ruminated. Don sent off a message to Linus asking if he and Zenobia wanted to join them. He declined, but said a delivery to the barn had been made for the trip. He mentioned that he had already been there anyway, so he would see them when they arrived. After clearing the table and doing the dishes, everyone went into the barn to see what Linus had delivered. Honey broke into tears, and Don even moistened up a little bit. You see, long ago, they had gone on a rescue mission to retrieve Scott after he'd been thought dead during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. To assist them on their endeavor, the captain of flying ship had his carpenter create a cart. It was constructed of ship's part, and they had even added shocks to it for a better ride. Once Scott had been rescued, it had been given to him. Linus had inherited it and had even embellished it a little. Windows had been installed and very comfortable cushions to lay on the seats. There was a wool rug laid on the floor and a cask of wine with cups in a corner. Everyone went inside and took a nap. Note: I need to clarify that they went inside the house to sleep and did not all cram into the cart for slumber. Everyone was eager to be off, but felt a small repose would be enough to fortify them. Don was up early and dressed in his toga when the others slipped into the lab to change. He programmed Fred to place them a few miles out from where the Olympics would be held, then hitched up the horses. The new remotes for the horses were converted to chest plates that were attached to the harnesses. They were now fully functional and could be used for tracking in case something ever happened to the person with the horses. After Donald went missing through a damaged remote, it was decided to upgrade the simple bio-remotes the horses wore into something a little more beneficial. Don pushed the touch plate to activate the barn portal. They emerged in the middle of a wooded area, guiding the cart skillfully over the uneven terrain and onto the slope stone road that they began their journey. I apologize. Sounds of smacking and oohs greeted Don's ears. Honey's face poked through the communicating hatch. "Don, Linus really outdid himself with this match. It's the best he's ever made. Don was understandably a little perturbed. Well, hand me a cup. Honey's face reappeared at the hatch. You can't have any. You're driving. With a happy chuckle, she went back inside. She knew just how long to let Don steam before doing what she was going to do anyways. She handed him out a cup of wine. Don knew she would, but still got worked up to spite himself. The wine was as good as they had said. Soon he regaled himself back into normal good humor. Finding a place to stow the cart was difficult. They found a dwelling about half a mile away and paid to have the cart stored and the horses stabled. Locating the temple was made easier due to its size. All they had to do was keep it in sight, or they could just follow the crushed people that were going there as well. The stairs of the temple, as well as the hill, were used as seating and were pretty well packed with spectators and contestants. Linus waved them over and removed the obstructions from the seats near him. I was just visited by myself and told that you would be coming, so I made arrangements. I'm running in the stadium race. They now had a front row seat and were disappointed to find out that it was only to be running races this time. In front of an area that had been marked off that was about the size of a football stadium, the race would be held, as this was also a religious festival. On a podium stood a priest who gave the opening oration. Behind him stood several poets who would read their works in honor of Zeus. In the center was a long pit where oxen who would be sacrificed as an offering. The meat was to be distributed to all who had arrived. As the poets spoke their pieces, Don talked quietly with Linus. I thought only Greeks were allowed to run the first Olympics. Don inquired how Linus, a Roman, was allowed to participate. I'm an adopted Roman. My dad was Greek and sent me to Rome for schooling. Unfortunately, he lost a lot of money and couldn't afford to keep me in school. I had just been released because of it when I met Scott. I needed someone to pour my heart to, and he was it. We couldn't understand each other, but his heart was so great he understood I was in trouble and went with me to enroll me. He also paid for me to have a place to stay and daily meals. Later, he introduced himself to my father, and how he located him, I'll never know. My father had abandoned me to shift for myself, and once Scott understood that, he adopted me as a son. Here Linus teared up at the memories. He gave me everything, and I tried to let him know he was my only father in my heart. Anyway, I still have my tablet of birth and heard about the games from my future self, and that it was important that I attend and participate under my Ellis certificate. I had to adjust it a bit so I could use it, though just the dates of my name have been changed. I'm running as Cornelius of Ellis. After an hour, the games started in earnest, and Linus went to join the rest of the runners. There was only the stadium race, and they watched as the judges placed themselves on either side of the start and finish. The distance was paced off at 620 feet, or the size of Hercules' feet. There were stones embedded in the earth as start points for the runners. To the disappointment of the female contingent, wrapped shorts were worn. Linus was to the right next to Eurystheus of Megara, and on his left was Perophas of Thebes. They squatted in starting position and used the stones as starting blocks. You could see the muscles tense and relax as the runners built up energy. A horn was blown and the runners were off. Linus had kept himself in training, and it showed. He was going steadily and pacing himself. On his right, Arsippus was giving everything he had and would probably be short-winded by the end. He lost his shorts by the time they reached the midpoint, but he was so focused he continued running. You have to give him credit for heart, Honey said. The guild contingent was shouting as loud as they could for Linus, or as he was being called here, Cornelius, or Coriolis. It was a hard-fought race, and they stayed close to neck and neck. Linus was nearing the end of the field and using up whatever reserves he had left in a burst of speed, and he was outpacing his competitors for the last 20 yards. Oripos put on a burst of speed and was close to catching up. Linus looked over his shoulder and nearly precipitated himself laughing. But alarm spread over his face, though, as he saw that Oripos was closing in on him. Linus dug deep and put on another burst of speed. 10 yards away from the finish, and Linus was able to open the distance between them. He practically left the ground to reach the end, and with seconds to spare, crossed the finish. He went into a sprawling roll as he attempted to brake quicker than was possible. He lay there amongst the sprawling bodies of the rest of the runners. The judges conferred and made their way to the center to announce the winner. Coriolis of Elis, they shouted, and Linus was bestowed with a crown of owlies. At his request, he was also given the torch that was used to light the fire for the sacrifice. Oripos nonchalantly went back down the track to collect his shorts. That was all there was for the first Olympic Games, a few poems, a sacrifice, and a race. Linus accompanied them back to the cart. Everyone agreed that it might be better show if they went ahead a couple of 100 years. Collecting the cart, they drove back to the woods to George's and back to Linus's home. Don got down from the driver's seat and going back to the lab set the portal for an in situ changeover. Overlaying the two periods created a portal through which Don was able to project in front of them, similar to the duck blind setting Zeke had worked out. Don got back in the driver's seat and drove them through, closing it by pressing a button on his remote. Honey passed out a cup of wine to Don as they wanted to toast Linus's success at the race. A cheer went up from inside the coach, and Don began, for he's a jolly good fellow, to which all joined in. Turning into the drive of Linus's house, they got out and went inside. Future Linus was already there, seated with a meal under cloth waiting. The two Linuses went to either end of the table, and everyone else situated themselves on either side. Linus lifted the cloth to reveal a Burger King breakfast of bacon croissant sandwiches and French toast sticks. All dug in and extolled that it was a fitting repast for so arduous an accomplishment. Linus of the future requested to borrow the torch, as he had a special use for it. Placing it carefully into a leather bag, he went to present it at the induction of the newest members meeting of the Guild of Travelers. He returned with it and whispered in Linus's ear something that made them both laugh. From out of the bag came the torch again, and it was placed ceremoniously on a central place in the living room. Linus returned to his seat, refilled his coffee, and waited expectantly. Linus's cat Shadow came swiftly in and greeted everyone. He was 20 now and was slightly blind in one eye. After being sufficiently appreciated, he went to the shelves and climbed up to his usual spot. As he climbed, both Linuses were sitting on the edge of their seats in expectation. Finding his usual spot obstructed by a new object, he fixed them all with an angry glare and proceeded to slowly push the torch off the shelf. Frances made a quick dive and caught it as it fell. Looking around thoughtfully, she found a niche in the wall and placed the torch inside. It faced a little more forward than it should have, but it was safe. After all, cats don't really care if something is special to you. Shadow curled up on the shelf, his fur gently moving in the warm breeze from the open window, and promptly fell asleep. So that was a quick rendition of the first Olympic Games. Looking for some new things to read. If you know of anything, maybe I can talk Steve into letting me do another chapter from Ledger Creation. I would love that. But in the meantime, I'll continue to read from my own books. I think we'll do a short from a glimpse of my shorts or another glimpse of my shorts. And right now I am working on some new books, so we'll get some more out there sometime in the near future. Have plenty of things to read. If you have anything subjects that you can think of that you'd like to hear about or have a short story made of, let me know. I love trying to come up with new ideas. In the meantime, that's it for today. I appreciate you stopping by for a visit, and we'll get some more stories out there probably sometime this weekend or next week. So thank you again for visiting, and hope to see you again on the next story time. Thank you. Bye. I'm going to figure out how to stop this thing.